It is episode 283 of View from 202, and that strange voice that you heard hosting the show a couple months ago, 3 months ago, is back again. This new strange character who's not usually on the podcast, which is hosting Cork.
Yes.
This is the hosting Cork voice again, back with you for another Britless episode of View from 202.
Yeah, unfortunately, Brit has been called into Trump's cabinet, so he may not be coming back, I guess, or he might actually be investigated or something and come back immediately. Who knows?
I mean, everything's up in the air. It's obviously a new era in Washington and across the whole country. I don't know I've been strangely surprised by how little the post-election discourse has kind of contaminated the rest of my life. So I don't know. We could maybe keep it that way, unless you guys have like thoughts you want to break off.
That was the only bit I had.
Yeah, good enough for me.
There was an election?
Yeah, exactly. But what else has been in the news? Anything been going on in Major League Soccer? I don't know. Maybe the New York Red Bulls.
Oh, Atlanta United beat Inter Miami.
Oh, for real?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't. Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of all over the place lately, so I haven't been paying that close of attention. But okay,
Messi's not in the playoffs
that's interesting.
anymore.
Oh no!
So we
for
can't.
real?
That's why we canceled the episode.
No.
Yeah.
Oh fuck!
We don't.
What's the league gonna do?
I mean, they could still be pushing Moss sports drink.
I mean,
the Lionel Messi hydration product.
Jeez, I'm kind of less interested in watching the rest of the playoffs now that I've heard that.
Speaking of, I know we don't talk about him on this thing, but did you see that apparently Messi's getting sued by like Logan Paul for imitating Prime?
Oh, I did see that.
I did not see that. What happened?
So his like sports drink looks a lot like a bottle of Prime, apparently.
Really?
Specifically, I think the iShow Speed flavor.
Wow.
So
what's his energy drink called?
Moss,
Moss.
I think.
Oh man, so many pop culture has just become action figures fighting each other.
So
politics has become the same
we
thing.
might
It's
see
so great.
Lionel Messi boxing, I guess, Logan Paul or something.
Yeah, maybe if we have time later in the episode, we can talk about Mr. Beast interviewing Cristiano Ronaldo. But in the meantime, any other MLS playoff results that are worth noting? You mentioned, I guess, Atlanta.
Well, that actually is the most relevant because that means that there's a window for us to host again.
Oh
yeah.
So the Red Bulls are
sure.
still in it, though, you're saying?
Yes, they did beat the team that they actually have not beaten that much in playoffs.
Wow. Okay. So what all happened with that?
Actually, like it was pretty eventful, pretty playoffy. Actually,
all right,
I don't know if
let's get into it. Yeah.
You know, these late goal deciding goals strike again from the regular season into the playoffs. It seems, except for the first game. But.
Good job, Apple writers. So I'll drop the shtick now. Obviously, if you are tuning in, you are well aware that the New York Red Bulls upset the Columbus Crew in a 2-game. I'm not going to call it a sweep. Like there are a lot of voices that were calling it a sweep, and I don't know if that's a.
Actually, I am going to start calling it a sweep so that if I start beating people in rock, paper, scissors, best 2 out of 3, I can be like, I sweep.
I swept your ass.
I did a rock sweep on this motherfucker.
Yeah, because it's just like, I don't know. It's kind of a thing where like, and
if we draw, we have to immediately go to penalties for rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, exactly. Even leaving the circumstances of like the shootouts and that whole element of it aside, although maybe not actually. Like winning 2 games is not, like that's not really a winning streak in any context. It's like, if you win 2 games of an aggregate normal, like traditional soccer tie, it's not like called a sweep or whatever. But then, the other factor is that, we technically just kind of drew one of the games. So,
we won the the confrontation of that particular day, though.
Well,
is,
I
guess,
mean, that's
the scoring system.
obviously, or else
You
we
know,
wouldn't
that's
be
how
sitting
you-
here talking about it. But
Guess the last time the Red Bulls have won 2 games in a row.
That's a good question.
you say that like it's kind of a challenge. There's
maybe.
like kind of a trick to it. Because is it not within this
I
calendar
think
year?
it's not this season, right? It's last.
No, it's this season.
Okay, we had a win streak this season.
Yeah, because I mean, the early part of the year, obviously, in
I thought we just drew
Shield contention for
Yeah, but like
month
we were
or
still
two.
drawing in Shield
right.
contention. Was it like
March?
April?
May into
Oh,
June.
okay.
June 1st was the last. So we beat Charlotte in Orlando.
But that, you're
But
saying
that was
that,
like
that's
2
just
games.
that's only 2 games in a row.
2 games in a row. So we've only done that 3 times this season.
Nice.
Where we've won, and it was just
we
2.
still haven't done that.
We hadn't won more than 3
This is
games
still
in a row.
technically
And we
not
still
done.
haven't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the way the format is, if you want to quibble, which I certainly would like to quibble. Lord knows I've been quibbling all year. Technically didn't win one of those games, but anyway, putting all of that pedantry aside, obviously in advance, regardless of whether it's a sweep or not, it is a pretty momentous, playoff advancement by the Red Bulls, upsetting the Columbus 2? 2, yeah, exactly, 2 seed.
And we did enough at that point to have prevented an all Ohio next round.
Which that's an accomplishment within itself.
But like City had to ruin it by winning their bout too.
And even more annoying than saying it was an all Ohio final, they were going to call it what is it? The Hell is Real.
Is that their
Shut up.
rivalry?
That's annoying.
name?
That's
Yeah.
like college football shit. Fuck out of here.
You know what a good rivalry name? What was it?
Call it what?
The Columbus Montreal rivalry
Toronto, right?
or Toronto? Is that
Well,
what?
I don't know what they called
They
it.
had a cool name for it. I forgot what it was.
But having like a sassy little name for your rivalry is like SEC college football crap that I think we need to avoid.
You don't like El Trafico?
That's not SEC. Like just like
Yeah, Hell is Real
having a
is
whole
so
phrase. We should resist all SEC culture unless we want more election results like that to happen. Anyway. It's a good point. Prevented an all Ohio final.
The
That's a
Trillium
virtue within
Cup?
itself. Okay, that's cool.
Right? Yeah, that's a cool name.
that's just a
It
thing.
is the official flower of the Canadian province of Ontario and wildflower of the state of Ohio.
Okay.
It's an arbitrary rivalry, but okay,
Sure.
let's go for it.
I mean, who cares? Because
I
we
didn't even know
fucking.
Trillium was a flower. It just sounds cool.
I mean,
does sound
we
cool.
canceled it anyway, so no need to worry. Obviously it's been quite a break without kind of lingering on the MLS playoff format too much like we have in recent episodes, but still short enough that you'll probably remember the results. A 1-0 win in Columbus, and then a 2-2 draw that ended up in a shootout that the Red Bulls came away with a few saves by Carlos Coronel and then a clinching finish shot, whatever you call a successfully taken penalty, by Daniel Edelman. So that's where things stand. I don't know. I guess I'll kind of open the floor to you guys I don't know if we want to go kind of linearly through both games and kind of discuss the ups and downs of them, or just kind of freestyle with your feelings. But what's going on? How have you been basking in the afterglow of this result?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I thought that this break might have affected my interest in this game a little more,
Right.
Than it did. But yeah, now I mean, like just knowing that I'm going to see the game, I guess, and that it's not some kind of series, despite the last round having been a series.
You're talking about the City game.
The City game, yeah. I guess my feelings for the
The
Columbus
City game in the next round.
in the next round, yes. I guess my feelings for the Columbus game that we had just passed also have not really escaped me that much. I think my main takeaway is that having a playoff game at RBA gave me a different feeling about just the postseason as its own entity compared to maybe like how this whole season overall this year, maybe.
You're saying they've successfully hit the reset button?
I think no. There's still like this like stain of what this feeling felt like that's been amplified because now I'm watching this game with stakes at a visceral level and feeling a little bit of what could have been if there were stakes the whole season. If we're going towards like supporter shield kind of contending team, and B, like there was a really, to me, serious feeling at Red Bull Arena for the second game about like both the atmosphere there. I think it was a playoff environment. It felt like the team knew kind of was up for it. Like the Red Bull like players were up for it, and the crowd had that like, you know, when you like see the stadium filled and people are just cheering for like maybe some routine defensive efforts, and they're like, oh, this is like a soccer crowd. It felt like that again a little bit, and just for this like little postseason game. So for me, it's like, oh, this is like what I've been missing this whole
You're
time.
reminded of the good things about
good
the
old
club,
times.
and it makes you feel even worse about some of the shortcomings of this season because it means now this moment is a little bit less prepared than it would have been.
Yeah, and also just that like clearly there are at least 20,000-ish people who care about serious soccer, and that like it's disappointing that those people are not going to be spoken to come back towards here, maybe necessarily. But I think there are more efforts, like, you know, the fact that my ticket was paid for by the front office, that are kind of like maybe at least a little bit of, you know, the bare minimum to show, you know, your flowers,
Gratitude.
send your flowers, you know, that way. But yeah, like I really like that feeling. Like that's why I think the shootout had like a little bit of impact, just because the crowd was really up for it, just because they knew like there's this tense kind of close game. Felt like something was at stake. And it's like, yeah, this, like, why am I watching the regular season of MLS? Maybe it's like one of those, you know, like how there are tons of sports now where you just don't watch the regular season, like just, and people only care about like the last few games in the playoffs, you know, like it's feeling like that for me now.
Especially when you're almost guaranteed a spot. You really don't have to do anything to get in there. I was gonna say, when was the last time that you felt the way you did for this Columbus game at a Red Bulls home game?
Maybe like some cold CCL game or something, you know, like
So like 2019.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Because I was gonna say, like, you know, the last playoff game that we even had
didn't feel like that.
Not at all.
No. And there's like, there was like this feeling of
The last two, right? I mean, even if what was it? You know, we
none
had
of the Philly games that we were at either, like,
Right.
really felt like that. But like there was this feeling like, oh, there's something to play for here. And I don't know what it was about this series necessarily. Maybe it's the fact that it's Columbus and that's a monkey on the playoffs that we haven't really gotten off our back with some serious teams. And that like getting that early goal against Columbus let us know, hey, like, you know, let's just go and win this. But it's just like there's this renewed a little sense of like this postseason like separation as its own entity. Like, oh, there is something to play for here.
So
It
it
is-
feels.
it
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, it is an interesting palindrome that the last kind of like big cathartic playoff result that we had was against Columbus
yeah.
in 2018, before the Atlanta loss. So yeah, just kind of mentioning that parallel as well. But what were you going to say, Sam?
Well, it was the last like sequence of like even remotely close like playoff games in like the recent past was when we played Charlotte, and then we played Cincinnati both at home. And I was gonna say, you know, in that Cincinnati game, even going into it, like I don't think there was that like level of energy or excitement, you know, after kind of advancing in this kind of first round and getting to this next stage. That to me would be like the closest equivalent, but I don't think anybody like got up for it. And even when we were there, like, you know,
And there's one thing
deflated very quickly.
Right.
And there's also one thing I think that separates this feeling from kind of like more serious seasons from the past, where we've had kind of more tangible runs at MLS Cup or something like that, where it's just like it doesn't feel like there's a real like sunk cost to this whole thing either. It's just kind of like, oh, we're here for like the good vibes too. It's not like it is serious, but it's not like invested. It doesn't feel like there was a big investment into this.
Well, with that, maybe we can just, since there are stakes, as you're saying, Peaches, maybe we can go old school with the podcast format here and actually analyze the games.
Whoa.
Maybe break them down a little bit. We won't go off on too many tangents, but let's just maybe try and see how it goes. But we'll start with the first leg, which was in Columbus at their, what's it? Is it called Lower? It's still called Lower.com. That's utter woke nonsense. All naming rights are weird, but that's a really bad one. But anyway, at Lower.com Stadium for the first leg in Columbus, in the Red Bulls rollout, Skip Scandro Schwartz rolls out a kind of what debatably a 3 or 5 man back line, depending on your taste. But with Sean Nealis, Andres Reyes, and Dylan Nealis as center backs, Cameron Harper and John Tolkien as wing backs or, fullbacks. And then a midfield that's become pretty consistent, even towards the end of the regular season, where you have kind of a double pulley system of Daniel Edelman and Felipe Carballo, or as Danny Higginbotham and Steve Cangelosi were probably more correctly pronouncing it, Carbaggio in the broadcast.
Well, Higginbotham was like Carbaggio.
Carbaggio.
He didn't really. I don't think he really tried.
Yeah,
He's the Baroque artist
Yeah.
Caravaggio.
Yeah, exactly. But that kind of deep midfield, and then Emil Forsberg, of course, in the advanced midfield 10 role, and then a more or less strike partnership up top of Lewis Morgan and Dante Von Zer. Obviously, Carlos Coronel in goal. You already knew that. But ends up being a somewhat, from the run of play, a somewhat expected game where Columbus pretty thoroughly controls the run of things and dominates the possession numbers to a fairly extreme degree. I mean, we know that Red Bull doesn't like to use the ball anyway, but it's certainly against a team like Columbus that's going to be exaggerated even more. So but kind of like Peaches was saying a minute ago, this was a uncharacteristic Red Bulls playoff, at least opening, where they actually get that opening goal that's so crucial to the team being able to control the game tactically from the Red Bull side of things, which is allowing the other team to have possession and allowing them to make mistakes and have the Red Bulls be the team that absorbs pressure and eventually breaks on a team that has become a little lilted in the back with all the possession. And sure enough, that's kind of what we see in this Columbus game to a T. What do you guys think about both how the formation played out and how the tactics played out in the first game?
Very, very relieved that we're not doing a 4-2-2-2. That's
right.
like destroying our midfield.
Right. I think that's key.
That general shift worked in our favor, I think. Like you're saying, the way that the numbers panned out and the way that the game panned out is very much the game state of a chippy 1-0 that you score early on. I think those usually play out like that. I think we generated ourselves a lot of good chances. Like immediately after we scored our goal, Lewis Morgan missed that
breakaway. Yeah. Well, not even a breakaway, but he was 1-on-1 with, I think it was Morera.
Yeah, he beat his defender, and then he normally would have wrapped that shot around the keeper and put in the side netting, but it just obviously was wider.
Shocking that it didn't go in.
And I think that kind of continues throughout the game.
Obviously, before that, Carballo had scored on the kind of a bounce on a corner kick. Yeah.
And, I think that comes back around in general for Lewis Morgan, that he's getting a lot of open looks that he should be scoring that he doesn't. But it's also I think overall, like you're describing, I think we might disagree on this, Cork, but in that kind of battle of attrition of absorbing pressure and trying to get good breakaways or good transition goals, I thought that we had actually generated better chances than Columbus did in general, and that we had more control of the game in that sense than A, it looked, and B,
Columbus definitely in a kind of a stereotypical way that's often used to describe possession teams, definitely didn't have a cutting edge to all the passing they were doing.
Yeah.
Obviously, Columbus, has certainly earned all the plaudits they've gotten over the last couple of years about being a very impressive passing team, not just by MLS standards, but by global standards, depending on the metrics you look at, and by the eye test as well. They are quite an adept passing team, and in this game, they were pretty much toying with us the whole game, passing it around, short plays, taking the team, forcing the press out into peripheral areas where a lot of dirty running was going on. But then, like I said, not a whole lot of edge once they got into the final third, not a whole lot of ideas. They were missing Diego Rossi, one of their main offensive focal points. And just couldn't really turn all the possession and fluent passing into clear chances in the box. A lot of times, the best chances that Columbus ended up creating were kind of just lateral crosses.
Well, I was gonna say, whenever they went wide to put the cross in too, because it's not like they're breaking us down at the center,
right?
And that's the only times it seemed like they were able to get attackers on the ball in our box. So to me, those are like you're saying, maybe dirtier chances than they would normally be generating. But yeah, I think we were able to keep them more or less at bay with kind of the staff that was on the pitch.
I mean, you meant, it's already been touched on, but I think the formation is, and anything is better than the 4-4-2.
Play the old school Christmas tree formation.
Right. But specifically, if you're going to pursue Red Bull style pressing, I've always been kind of a fan of the 3/5 man back line, and then having two strikers up top, and you have a pretty intuitive kind of prong to be pressing with all over the field. So you were saying something a minute ago, Sam?
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned controlling the game. I think that's generally the way Red Bull came out and played this was, I think, exactly how they
wanted.
How exactly
Drew it
everything
up,
unfolded exactly how they wanted it to. I think that the only concern I guess I would have is just that I think our back line hasn't shown itself to be airtight this season. So playing into that, absorbing a ton of pressure, I thought we were going to break.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad we didn't. But I think some of that's definitely on Columbus. There were no, I don't really remember any big shots outside the 18 or the edge of the box from Columbus in the second half.
And again, credit to Schwartz if this was a, instruction, which I feel like it often is against this player, but Nagbe, who is, so central to what Columbus does, and was in the center of a lot of things in this game, obviously, and kind of, piecing together a lot of their passing. But he's a guy who just, for whatever reason, his game does not involve penetrating in the final third. And again, credit to Schwartz. It seemed like the instruction was to just kind of give him a ton of space the closer you were getting to goal. You don't really have to close him down because he's kind of spooked about carrying the ball into the box or making a forward pass in the final third. And you saw a lot of that in this game where they let the ball funnel to him. And, he was, obviously able to do damage or kind of create space deeper down the field. But once you got further up, he was not a very kind of, purposeful figure, Nagbe. So especially without Rossi, there wasn't really an obvious equation for Columbus to use to kind of break us down. And even with, like you were saying, Sam, this defense not being as airtight as it's been, even in some of the bad recent seasons, still was able to, survive in this game. That's all you really have to do in a road playoff game. So,
yep. I thought it was interesting starting Nealis over Ayla in this kind of
Dylan Nealis?
Back three.
I guess it's debatable whether Dylan or Sean
which one
is up on the depth chart at this point because Dylan's come up so much. But.
Yeah, but not having Ayla start was interesting. Mm-hmm. I think it worked out and working
if you're not planning on trying to construct things passing wise, which certainly in this game against a team like Columbus it would prescribe that, then yeah, definitely. And it was kind of a thing that I diagnosed a bit when Ayla was signed, where it was and even in the early parts of him playing in the team this season, where it's he's good passing the ball, and like he brings a lot more to the team build up wise with the way he plays. But then if he was also as good, in the air and tackling and all the defensive sides of center back play, if he, was as good as, Aaron Long or Sean Nealis or Andres Reyes and some of those guys in those aspects, plus the passing, he would be like $10-20 million player and not at the New York Red Bulls. So you're putting a player like Ayla out there to be kind of more of a build-up center back means you're, kind of zero sum dropping some of your defensive solidity. So yeah, along those lines, definitely a good move by Schwartz.
Yeah, and I feel like this comes into fruition much more in the next game, but like putting Nealis in there generate a lot of chances from him being there to intercept balls on kind of the diagonal on those lateral passes that you're talking about. I think Nagbe missed a lot more of them at RBA, and Dylan Nealis was really there to just keep up and clean up after kind of anything that went a little errant. And then, that put us into that transition a lot in the RBA game, especially in the different game state, because, we're at home and chasing at that point.
Right. It's part of why I'm so surprised that, the 4-4-2 has been so dedicated to, and the team hasn't used the 3 center back formations as much, because I think the personnel of the Nealis brothers actually provides a pretty interesting, pretty solid way to run a 3 center back lineup where Dylan Nealis really can be kind of like that sweeper. He's kind of Dylan Nealis is kind of like a third wing back and a third center back at the same time. He's good in the air, but he also can make, recovery runs on the ground. And I think when you're running a 3 center back line, you can't have it all be a bunch of slow 6'3" guys. You have to have at least one guy who's a bit mobile, who can go north and south, depending on what's happened with the other 2 center backs. And along those lines, our personnel feels pretty intuitive for a 3-man back line. So it's surprising that it's pleasantly surprising that it's only being turned to now.
I agree with that totally. I was going to say really quickly, I think having him on the right too with Harper, I really like having both of them
interchange
on the same side, and being able to, as you said, north-south movement. I think it's good when you cover somebody like Harper who,
runs up a lot.
He's very aggressive, which is great. It's like the whole point, right, of having like a wing back, and something that Tolkien has struggled with for so long. But having that extra cover is really helpful. So he does, he provides a pretty critical role. So I'm really glad he did start.
Yeah, and like what you're saying too, like having a third center back requires that mobility. And I think the same way that our roster suits having a 3-man back line, I think Dylan Nealis' skill set very much suits for him to be a third center back more than anything, obviously. So.
You're just putting out fires. You're not necessarily man marking a single guy or expected to be the last guy in the air or something like that. You can kind of freelance and figure out where the danger is.
Which is like why Aaron Long worked well in both 4 and 3-man back line. Right. I felt back in the time, just because he was so mobile when he played for us.
So that ended up being the result in Columbus. Obviously, the Red Bulls survive and earn a 1-0 result, bringing it was the opening game in Columbus was midweek, right?
Yeah, it was on a Wednesday.
It's been long enough that I've forgotten that element of it. And then,
2 and 3 had a week between.
Yeah, whatever. But fucking whatever, Don. But the second match was that Sunday night back in Harrison. Sam and Britt and I were all tied up with playoff softball in East River Park, so could not attend ourselves and could not watch live on Apple TV Plus. But Peaches, you were there at the match. You were kind of pining poetically about, kind of the atmosphere and some of the vibes of the game and what it means a bit earlier. But if you want to go ahead and, repeat yourself as much as you wish about how it was to be there actually.
Well, for first of all, they had that weird, was it $3 deal for food or something?
Oh.
they're definitely trying to get rid of stock. So
Sure.
what
was it, like hot dogs or?
It was like the most like the top 5 most popular menu items at the stadium. So it was like hot dogs, pizza, I think popcorn, soda,
were your
and
chicken
water.
fingers in the mix?
No. Maybe they were. I I was running late to the game, and this offer had only happened before in the pre-match.
Nice.
So what I had done, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but
You are.
I was on the app and I ordered while I was
While you were
walking to
not in
the
the
stadium
arena
while
yet.
I was not there, so I paid for it and then I picked it up later.
I don't think you're going to be in trouble. I'm sure they probably like that. I'm sure they like the idea of somebody being that dedicated to
using the app.
Yeah,
but all that stuff aside, like I was saying before, it felt more adult just in general, and to me the biggest indicator of like this kind of different feeling, funnily enough, was very like I think visual, where I saw like in the 49th minute or something, the 50th minute when it typically happens, I saw people trying to start the wave a few times and it never caught.
okay.
And for me that was like,
That's a good litmus test.
yeah, it's like if it doesn't even get like a quarter of the way around the stadium, it's like people are watching the game. They're here for this. People are cheering for the game. They're not cheering for the cameras. Like they're reacting to the stuff that's happening. I like that.
So you're saying it was a lot more diehards than you've come to expect over the course of the last couple
I
of years?
don't even know if it's diehards, but just like sports focused people,
Yeah.
game focused people.
Apparently the not to belittle a little bit, but apparently the tarps were a bit extended.
I thought
said?
like I'd walked. So the last
The tarps were not off.
Well, the last regular season of the game, season game of the season, they were off.
The last regular season game
Or something like that.
Yeah.
The last game I'd been to in the stadium, which I think would have been the last regular season game. So I had actually sat up just for old time's sake in the highest spot at the stadium just to watch the game.
Nice.
It was pretty nostalgic. But I felt like the tarps for this game were maybe like a row or two lower than they were before. But, they kind of like more or less sold most of the tickets.
Well,
to the
yeah, I
stadium.
mean, that was going to be I was using that to kind of preface that the crowd looked pretty solid on TV.
It felt pretty solid.
But mentioning that they do kind of have that artificial help from the tarps the last couple of years, which, not to belabor the point, but like, yeah, that we've made on the show already this last couple of years. But stadium has probably needed a tarps for a while. Might as well just call it what it is and say that that's kind of a permanent thing the arena needs.
We got punished for being too ambitious.
Right.
Like
crazy the Obama administration, man. Crazy times.
we believed,
Yeah, exactly.
We believed that we could win then.
Before the country entered the dark ages. But
it was just overbuilt, but like
yeah, it's it is what it is. But crowd did look good on TV, and it ended up being quite the rowdy game. It ended up being a obviously 2-2 draw that ended in a shootout. Like I said, not really the same thing as a win that would be able to be called a sweep, but nonetheless, enough of a performance to knock out the defending league champion,
have something to cheer for at home.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
when's the last time we've done that?
What, like a big win at home?
Have like that kind of cathartic moment for that kind of stakey
one of the
things.
Like playing City in the Open Cup at RBA, like 2021-ish, wasn't it?
Maybe.
But because even like the 2022 Open Cup run was a lot of road games.
Yeah.
And certainly in the regular season, last couple of years, there's not been very many high stakes games. So
man, it's been too long.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
But
honestly, like my opinion, I'm just realizing, I think my opinion of this team and like how I feel about this team changes a lot when you, even this time, quote unquote, win at home.
Yep.
Right.
And we haven't been doing a lot of that in the past few years.
But obviously maybe not obviously, he could have very well switched back to the 4-4-2, but Schwartz ends up keeping the 3-4-1-2, I guess is what FootMob is classifying it as. But pretty much same lineup, same personnel. No real changes, as we were just discussing. Maybe the option of slipping Isla back in for one of the center backs, but Schwartz elects not to do that. Sticks with the same group from last time, and bit more touch and go in this game, certainly, but ends up securing the result. Kind of a quiet first half. Ended up being, would you describe the atmosphere as tense at halftime, being there in person?
Yeah, I would. I think it was like people were feeling like, a little despondent by halftime at kind of like the idea, maybe. But
Well, because certainly now that we know the result and we know that we advanced in kind of dramatic fashion, it's a bit easy to forget that, the feeling after that first leg was like, oh, wow, we, survived that game, but it was still kind of just surviving. And it's not necessarily like, we're in control now. It's still having to handle Columbus, and a team that, remember, in the last game of the regular season, beat us handily at home. So it was not necessarily a confident mood going into this game, but yeah, and like I said, at half, would have imagined that it would be a little more dicey feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still a little feeling in the back of everyone's mind that this wasn't going to be the last game, no matter what, either.
Yeah,
like that it's not a knockout game. So
Right.
it was like, a little playing with house money feeling, regardless. But like we got away with the first one almost a little bit, so maybe we can get away with another one there.
Right.
But yeah, it felt tense, but not like pessimistic, or like it didn't feel like you were going to lose hope necessarily, regardless of how the game went.
So Columbus does open the scoring in the 55th minute through Max Arfsten. I feel like that's just such a stereotypical 2020s soccer guy name, but ends up being Columbus, as they did not in the first leg, works a little bit of possession and actually kind of carves up a bit of an opening. Hernandez puts in a little bit of cross through the box that Arfsten is able to kind of just scoop up into the goal. And yeah, like I said, kind of the sort of chance, more of a kind of shallow cross that Columbus wasn't able to make the space for in the first leg, happens in this game. And none of the center backs for RB&Y pick it up, is kind of the story of it, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sort of a goal that happens against a good team.
Yeah.
Columbus was probably going to break us down eventually, and if they did, it was probably going to be a goal like that, if nothing else. But obviously, the team answers back through, I don't know, an unlikely source. Is that maybe the way to put it?
I think this is when someone said "Team with Destiny" in one of the chats I was reading, and I was like,
boy.
Yeah, it had to be him. Kind of like, and you were saying, like, we just watched the highlights, and you were saying it when he scored it through the keeper's legs, that it's.
Yeah, well, so as we're intimating now, Dante Van Zer steps up, rises to the occasion, freaking Dante.
Big match player.
Big match Dante steps up. Little bit of kind of a, sort of ideal Red Bull transition play where Forsberg ends up having a bit of space and a bit of a view to slide in sort of a flat, kind of straight ball for Van Zer to make a pretty intuitive run into the box that he kind of just smashes with the left foot. Now, kind of as Peaches was just touching on from the camera view, from the TV feed, it looks like a really solid, confident finish from Van Zer that, we've come to kind of expect the opposite from with him. Where, yeah, he just kind of smashes it into a corner, kind of, takes a good feed and makes a good finish. But as Peaches just said, when they show the reverse replay from behind the goal, you can see that he put it between the keeper's legs somewhat narrowly and, more or less. I mean, bit of a luckier finish than an actually deliberate putting it around the keeper.
I think
a finish that could have very easily been another Dante Von Zer smashing it right at the keeper moment.
To be fair to strikers, I think a confident striker puts that finish through. Like Bradley Wright Phillips did that a lot.
It only actually went through the keeper's legs because he smashed it and was able to keep it low.
And I feel like this was a case where it was I said this immediately after that. It was a good finish, but maybe not an intentional one.
Right.
Which is
sometimes you just got to fucking lather it.
You just touch the ball sometimes and it goes in. And that's what you do when you put yourself in a dangerous position like Dante Von Zer did. Which is to say also this is the point I think where it's just like, I think that there's something beside what the mechanics of soccer or sports or football are motivating and pushing this team forward. Because it's just like
you're saying team of destiny.
I'm saying there's a sense of fate about this team which destroys me because it's so unearned. Like there's nothing that's been earned about like us like kind of going through this in such a narrative arc of character development.
It's strange with how much of a villain RBNY has been painted as in the years when we've been good over time, that this year it feels like, I don't know, if to the extent that there's any discourse or cultural around the league at all, which we'll spare you that discussion this week, but it feels like it's kind of like a cuddly, like, oh man, look at the Red Bulls, like they're doing it. Meanwhile, This is maybe the most villainous result we've ever had. We knocked out like the feel good, sexy, like, not underdog, but like small market Columbus Crew. At the end of a season where we were just kind of a mess and they were one of the better teams in, the continent, leagues, certainly continent, whatever, what have you. Sorry, we're just... It's a Luna episode, if you can maybe hear in the background, but I don't know. It's a strange feeling, and I don't know.
I think you put the.
I'm straining not to be to not linger too much on our kind of hangups and hobby horses we've had all year. If you've listened to this show, but
I think there's something that you're saying like about us. Maybe it's not just that. It's not that I don't think we're villains necessarily. I think it's like maybe even worse than that. That like we're a little bit more NPC-ish.
Right.
Yeah, we are.
Right.
And that, but like that to me indicates also like my problem with why do we feel so fatalistic, at this point for our team when there's no protagonism? Like there's nothing, there's no protagonism behind the 2024 New York Red Bulls. Like, and we've been saying it, I guess, the whole time. But
well, I mean, Lord knows I'm hesitant to say this, but, seems like a pretty real thing that, this team is kind of night and day with and without Forsberg, which makes it even weirder and shadier that he just dipped out on half the season.
That makes him more villainous.
And is, currently dipping out to do Sweden friendlies in the middle of playoff season. So whatever. But when he is on the field and healthy, he is a difference maker in the parlance of the times. The rest of this game to kind of segue from Forsberg, he ends up being the guy who gets the equalizing penalty after Columbus had, not equalizing, go ahead penalty to put Columbus on the ropes, more or less. Columbus ends up tying the game with it was a free kick or corner kick? Can't remember, but
something from the side,
right? Yeah, it's a very
a corner kick.
Yeah, okay,
a great corner, honestly.
Oh yeah,
the top spin on the ball was crazy.
It just had to connect with somebody's
like Roger
head.
Federer.
Yeah,
right. It just somebody had to get on it. Somebody just had to touch it, and it was going to spin into goal. Yeah, it was one of those sort of
kind of like
snap corners.
It was kind of like the controversial game-winning free kick for Barca Ehrenreich this week from yours truly.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Perfect ball. Just needed a little touch. It was a headed goal to go ahead for the final. And those little, we have like 5 feet goals there. Yeah.
I was going to say, you've been waxing on a little bit about like, the nature of being a striker. And I think you've been a little inspired from your performance this weekend.
I'm more of an attacking midfielder, I think, on that team.
Sure.
But yeah, like I understand the Forsberg position, I think, a lot.
Okay. But yeah, this Columbus finish ends up. Columbus finish that was what, in like the 8th minute of stoppage time? There were like 12 minutes of stoppage time assigned.
5 minutes.
Jesus. Yeah. Like, golly.
There was time for them to win it all.
I mean, let the record show that even when it benefits Red Bull, I just hate this shit where we're now being super literal about stoppage time and deciding that, every single break and play needs to be tabulated. That's not what it was meant to be. We've been through that on the show, so let's focus on the games. But it sends it to this, not extra time, but a shootout.
Immediately.
A Leagues Cup style shootout to decide a league champion.
I hate to say it, but the Leagues Cup being my point of reference for this does make it very influential as a tournament.
It seems that way. It's inching that way. Ends up going, how many rounds was it before Edelman put it away?
7.
Yeah, because it was stuck at 4-4 for a while.
Cornell made 3 in a row.
Yeah. And ends up being the kid, since, are we still calling Daniel Edelman the kid?
It's like 22 now, right?
He's 22. His Tolkien's like the same age, I think. Are we still calling him a kid? I don't know. But the local lad, Daniel Edelman, delivers. Warren product, Daniel Edelman. It's all coming back home. He puts it away, and that's game. That's football, as I Show Speed would say. Red Bulls advance. We've been over a little bit of the context of beating Columbus and all what that means. So let's point our eyes forward to what we are, if you're listening probably on Friday or something this week, the Derby in the next round. New York / Hudson River. I don't know. There was some debate about that. I don't know. Whatever. Derby against New York City FC. It's going to be at Citi Field in Flushing instead of Yankee Stadium because there's like a monster truck rally or whatever happening
Notre
there.
Dame game or something.
All right.
Whatever.
Good.
Monster truck rally would be much more cool.
Yeah. No. Well, yeah.
I might go to the monster truck rally if there was one in Yankee Stadium.
always nice to get a reminder of where they are on the priority list with their ownership. But in the meantime, we're going to be going to City, a place that's become pretty familiar for some of the hosts of this show.
Oh, like I've gone to a few.
Yeah,
with
you've
you
gone
guys.
some too. Yeah,
all of the hosts of this show.
Yeah, but seeing it for soccer might be pretty jarring.
I've seen it for soccer already.
I'm not looking forward to that element of it. I've never been there for a soccer game, so
I was really kind of
my first time.
Yeah. I was sorry to interrupt. Because I honestly, I'm not able to go to the game this weekend because I'm going to be out of town. But I was kind of hoping that it would be at Yankee Stadium so that there'd be like some like remaining cursed energy from Game 5 of the World Series that would carry forward to City. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like if that were the atmosphere kind of going in, I feel like there'd still be some residual. Yeah. I can only imagine the crossover with City and Yankees fans.
That is the worst feeling about this all. Is that I feel like we've taken New York baseball playoff energy for the sake of the MLS teams, and was not the right decision by whoever's in charge of
by
sports.
The Apple producers.
Yeah.
Well, New York City, what goes on there? let's see. They defeated, like we mentioned earlier in the episode, the other Ohio team, the other Hell is Real team, Cincinnati, who, again, another fairly respectable, kind of likable, rare likable MLS team these days. The evil, villainous New York team knocks them out too. And here we are with a New York City versus Red Bulls playoff round. NYCFC, as we've kind of touched on in recent episodes, another team like the Red Bulls that had sort of a weird doldrum season. They obviously beat RBNY in that late season derby, 5-1. Pretty tough reversal of the Red Wedding. But now, as we mentioned earlier, it's new vibes, new energy in the air in these playoffs. So anything could happen. In that Cincinnati series, it was also they had to go through 3 games to decide that one, but it was also another one where the last game was a weird kind of cheap penalty shootout. So, how much City really earned their way here is sort of up for debate. A team that over the course of the season finished 6th, a little bit ahead of the Red Bulls, 3 points worth ahead of the Red Bulls. But a team that, still a little bit lacking in identity and the idea that it's really, a finished product, certainly in an even more long-term sense, not a finished product in the idea that they're still waiting on their permanent stadium to open. We kind of had a theme episode a couple months ago about how it feels like this derby, this kind of rivalry sort of doesn't mean much until that stadium gets opened and we have a sense of where both these clubs are. But in the meantime, we're going to have to play this freaking weird playoff game. So let's do a pulse check.
We can call the stadium. The stadium has a name.
No. Oh, that's right. There's a now a name.
Etihad.
After so much contentious bidding
for the naming rights,
so many wholesome companies that you know and love,
between
your favorite Etihad,
between Man Wipes and Etihad, it was Dude Wipes. Sorry.
Dude Wipes, Goya, Sara Lee, all of them were beaten
Monsanto.
out. Yeah, all of them were beaten
Enron.
out by Etihad. The fine folks at Etihad. It'll be Etihad Park.
Lehman Brothers.
Yeah. Etihad Park as opposed to Etihad Stadium or anything, which feels like another kind of little tacit concession that this is kind of like a smaller deal than they originally envisioned. I'm sure they wanted to have something that was like big and regal enough to be called a stadium or a coliseum or something, but they're just going to call it a park like it's a AAA baseball field. So
it reminds me of the original plans for RBA when it was going to be like Red Bull Park or whatever, and it was going to be basically
it was going to look like
Columbus,
the Crew Stadium with like a stage
constructor stadium.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the new version of that, what NYCFC is building.
Yeah, I don't know. But in the meantime, we're going to have to play this very strange
in the adjacent stadium.
Yeah, in the stadium in the next door to where the new stadium is going to be. Another team that kind of tripped over themselves on the way here. Beating more or less outlasting Columbus is Cincinnati is a little more accurate. But a team that a New York City team that has certainly as we've kind of lampooned them over the years, always seems to have a lot of new faces, always seems to be a little bit transient and with a bunch of NPCs, new group of NPCs every year, but also a lot of, weirdly familiar faces. You still got Maxi Morales in the middle of
back
things.
Again.
Yeah, crazy. Quieton Parks is still jumping around in the middle of the field. But otherwise, it's kind of another sort of weird hodgepodgey normal MLS team. They still have Cushing as manager. And, it's always kind of an enigma is like how you describe NYCFC and how they play, because so much of how they play is determined by the weird small baseball outfields that they play on. So, yeah, based on what we've seen, from this most recent 2024 Red Bulls team against New York City, little bit of reason for worry, I guess, as far as how Red Bull has reacted to the way they play. But Schwartz he had his press conference today and was, kind of taking a pretty confident stance that they have found the right tactical answers to reverse some of the misfortune that they've had against City this year. So
you say that, I'm on the opposite kick where I'm on my gambler's fallacy shit, where I think that we've lost enough where, that's good for us now, actually.
we're due for
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that end of it, and just, the recent league fixtures, and then also I think the stat I saw recently that was like, it's like 0 for 4 for Red Bulls in the last few away derbies in like elimination games.
Also a good
Yeah.
thing.
Well,
Perfect.
I'm butchering whatever the actual statistic
Whatever number
is.
you tell me,
But
it's
yeah,
good.
there's a lot of different tallies where it's been a while and the Red Bulls may be due for a win in this sort of context.
Yeah.
But
I'm like a DNC staffer a couple of weeks ago. Any number you tell me is actually a good poll.
okay, yeah, there you go. Not keeping to our word of avoiding politics. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, kind of as I laid out there, a bit of a mystery, a bit of a land of contrasts as we go into this game. So I don't know if we want to do straight predictions, but what are you guys expecting from this matchup?
Well, I mean,
It's going to be a one game single
winner takes
elimination
all.
thing, right?
Yeah.
90 minutes.
Still, yeah.
90 minutes and like 24 minutes of stoppage. Yeah.
Counted down to the second. I feel like this season for both teams, I mean, you can kind of just like discard. There really, I don't think is a narrative like around like either club. So I mean, in the same way that Peaches, you're talking gambler's fallacy, I'm kind of approaching this with the idea that like, whatever's happened this season really has no indication on like where these teams are at. And on the one hand, that's good for Red Bull because I feel like it gives us kind of this way to like redefine the season as it did in the first two games against Columbus. The other kind of part of it is the unknown, which is like where City kind of falls into all this. I mean, Cincinnati, I think, I was looking at their like recent form because I think somebody had mentioned, maybe it was on one of the broadcasts, because I think I was watching the third game with Cincy and City, and somebody mentioned that the form Cincinnati had going into the playoffs is pretty poor, and I think there was some like Leagues Cup fatigue that kind of just
They were in
carried.
Champions League too, right?
Yeah, I think so. There was some. I mean, I think them and Columbus both had like pretty heavy schedules, but Cincinnati especially, I think they had 3 wins out of their last 10 games. And for a team that I think we otherwise like held in pretty high regard, like they kind of like sluggish heading into the playoffs. And so I think that was a good draw for City. And I think less of a difficult matchup than, taking on Columbus or taking on like Miami. So to pull out the result there, I guess, even in 3 games is not nearly as like impressive, but these are all just short-term things. It's kind of hard just to say, like what, like, I mean, I don't think any of us have cared to watch a City game this year, except for the games that they played.
I have not carved out much time for City.
And even then, I feel like we're reluctant to even watch the games where they're playing us.
Yeah.
So,
this was the first time I didn't go to the game this year. Like,
so it's not like any of us have like a real idea, I think, of like how this team's going to line up. But some recurring characters, it's hard to say. I think one of the things that I think about is, this is just a general question because I just honestly have no idea, but I think Citi Field is a little bit larger of a pitch, right? Compared to Yankee Stadium.
I would think so. It would be hard to be much
Worse than that.
They align it like almost
a little bit more.
Like it doesn't overlap with the pitcher's mound there, right?
Is it like a little
it's
more
all
diagonal?
in the outfield,
Yeah.
I
it's
think.
more in the outfield, but I think will they just, is the pitcher's mound still up?
Yeah, does it even matter at this point?
That's what I'm thinking. Like it doesn't have to have that weird like bunch of carpet and stuff where the pitcher's mound usually is. So it's better from a surface standpoint and from a size standpoint.
But also, like, based on what I hear, operationally, nobody wanted to take on this game.
Yeah, I bet.
like, you know, putting up all the grass or something. So who knows what the setup's going to be like? It feels like it's going to be the bare minimum.
How much money Don Garver is losing having to pay Steve Cohen to bring his crew out.
I could almost guarantee this was like not a scenario he anticipated, was these two clubs playing each other
Right.
in this round of the playoffs. Like just not factored in at all. So I guess you'll find out on Saturday.
One of the things I was going to mention about kind of, you know, like the team of destiny that we are right now is like, it is kind of how a lot of MLS Cup winning teams end up being, right? It's just like they've
Tell me about it.
yeah, so many mediocre seasons, and then they just and this is like the conventional logic, right? You get hot at the right time. We're getting hot at the right time after not having been hot at all.
I hate MLS Cup.
Yeah, well,
Thank you for reminding me.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, on one hand, the playoffs is kind of like its own reset, but on the other hand, there's like, what? There's no like no one remembers MLS Cup for NYCFC, the team we're playing. You know, like it's not really that big of a deal. So
well, and then again, not to jump off into one of our you know kind of laments that we constantly have on this show, but yeah, it's become certainly with Miami out of the scene now. It's and you know even official league spokespeople were coming out and like literally voicing this that just like they wanted Miami to win, and it's kind of a situation now where the league will kind of pick and choose which you know trophies or runs to you know make a big deal out of. So yeah, who knows what the hell is going to happen with the rest of this,
especially post
tournament,
post alignment with the calendar. Maybe we get a balanced schedule in the winter league. Who knows what
they
happens.
need to shake something up for sure, but yeah, we'll have more time for that sort of big picture stuff when we check back with you probably next week, depending on what happens in this game.
Oh, yeah,
it's gonna be pretty like fast the rest of the playoffs, right?
Lewis Morgan apparently is going to be available.
Right. Morgan. And we forgot to mention that with the
International break.
Well, and also with analyzing some stuff in the earlier game where one of the finishes that Morgan missed, I thought he seemed a little bit injured, took it a little bit gingerly, and then sure enough, he was dealing with an injury. I guess had to withdraw from the Scotland team that he was called up for. Emil Forsberg went to the Sweden team with bells on, as usual. So he has been out of training this week, but otherwise it seems like it's pretty full, healthy squad. And then, yeah, any other pre-match notes worth noting and analyzing? You know, I think this, you know, I don't think we need to belabor it even more that this is going to be a strange derby, but you know, pretty blatantly the most important derby that happens. So we will almost certainly have a lot to chew on after Saturday, and we will touch base with you guys then. We'll kind of ramp up what has been sort of a decelerated episode publishing schedule, depending on how far the team of destiny keeps it going. So until then,
We'll see you at MLS Cup.
we will see you at the freaking MLS Cup in Flushing.
¿Sabes?